Hello, everybody. As we're waiting for the screen to be shared, we want to welcome you to our webinar. Screen is coming up, slides are coming up. Yes, Supremo. Very well. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar on NTLM version 1, the legacy risk that hackers love. Thank you for joining. We're thrilled to have you join us into this deep dive into one of the most overlooked yet dangerous authentication risk in modern networks. Wanted to wish you, a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And just want, to share a few housekeeping rules. Okay, so just we have some live audience, we have some chats, we have some questions. Want to make sure it's a smooth operation and everybody gets their questions answered. So the session will last approximately around half an hour, something like that, 35 minutes, followed by a Q&A in the end. Also, we'll try to, pepper and sprinkle those questions as we go along. Feel free to drop your question in the chat throughout the webinar, and we'll address them during the Q&A or whenever we see there's a good opportunity, to kind of quote unquote interrupt one of our speakers. If you experience any technical issues, try refreshing your browser or reconnecting to the session. And the most important part, the recording of the session will be made available after the webinar. So you don't need to take any screenshots. It's all there. Don't worry if you miss anything. All right, cool. Let's jump in. Let's explore and let's meet our speakers. As you can see on the screen, first, we have Roy Ackerman, who's lovely, joined Silverfort from acquisition of Resonate. He's the founder of Resonate and currently VP of Identity Security Strategy for Resonate. Also with us, we have Dor Segal, Security Research Team Lead, who is underwent tremendous efforts to show us to the curious minds out there to double click on vulnerabilities that we have found, and stay tuned. He's got some amazing demo for us today. What else? Also on the agenda, I just want to set the level straight. First, we'll explore the illusion of security and how many organizations are still unknowingly allow NTLM version 1 authentication. We'll also break down on how NTLMv1 works, why it is outdated yet poses significant security risk. It's amazing, mind-boggling that in 2025 we're talking about NTLM. Oh my God. We'll discuss how attackers bypass security controls and exploit misconfigurations to force NTLMv1, and also show you a great demo and talk about some real-world attack scenarios. And hopefully, get those questions. I see some nice interaction in the chat already. Some practical defense strategies, including tools and best practices for us. What else? Just making sure I haven't forgot anything. I think we're good. So moving on, Roy, take us away. Thank you so much. Oh, one last thing. My name is Yoad. Forgot, very good. I'm Lance. So I'm from product marketing. Humbled to be here with you. Roy, take us away. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So why are we speaking about a 30 years old or more protocol? Why are we speaking about this now? During the last few years and even more, we're figuring out that organizations have the default sense of security around this backward protocol, right? Around like NTLM. We think that it's blocked. We think that we don't use it. We're sure that, once the OS was updated and the version of 80 and others were updated, everything is fine. But the truth and the staggering stats shows that this is absolutely wrong. NTLM is still present. NTLM is still part of many of our legacy systems, many of the ways that we communicate, and attackers are still exploiting their way to your endpoints, to owning your identities based on that. Now, obviously, most of our customers or most of the people we're speaking with are aware of the problem. The problem is that taking NTLM away is a thing, and we'll speak about that as well. So, we'll take you through that journey of understanding why it's still here, what's happening, how it can be exploited, and more than that. So maybe let's just give a little bit of history and then why or how the vulnerability looks like
Mhm.
before actually demonstrating that, right, Yoad? I think that this is kind of like a very good way to start over with.
Amazing, a protocol from the 90s, I'm super curious to see why it is so much poses such a big risk in 2025. Yeah.
Right. And after so many CVs, so many publications, you said like it's overlooked, but what's going on here? So, like we're speaking about early 90s, for the tech savvies and veterans of you, it's like around Windows NT 3.1, right? And all the others, like with a magnificent like sounds at the beginning of the OS. But this is where Microsoft tried to start think about how to build something more secure, not spreading deciphered or non-encrypted credentials over the network and managing it in a very let's say secure way, right? So we're speaking about a means to communicate across local networks and Active Directory domains. And like it replaced some of the default authentication methods in the early versions of Windows and Windows 2000s and others. There are some other operating systems that are using this and or can use that, but it's not that straightforward. But the people of you that were, I don't know, IT admins back then, MCSEs or others will probably know that. Now, the main problem that we have with NTLM is that NTLM does not really verify the authenticity of the server, right? This is one of the most important things. The second one, obviously, is that we're speaking about very weak encryption algorithms that are being used.
Mhm.
And then when you're speaking about, and Dor will get into the details about how does this work in general and how we can play. But think about that. It's a security protocol, okay? Weak encryption, very weak challenge response mechanism. So, just like it implies of a man in the middle and other pass the hash, verticals that we can run, but it's still present in our network, right?
Mhm.
And why is that? It's because of backward compatibility, right? Microsoft just announced, right, of taking this out of support, but still backward compatibility, a lot of hard-coded or built-in usage of NTLM from the beginning on legacy systems. Where do we find legacy systems? Critical infrastructure, a lot of old OT systems and others. And by the end of the day, it's really hard for the fixes comes across generations, right? It was set, it was forget, it's on technologies that are unsupported, and here we
Mhm.
are finding it. So this is why we're speaking about a 30 years old protocol.
So, and although it has a version 2, as we know, still NTLMv1 is present with all the efforts to eliminate that. Can you also talk a little bit, if we move forward for a second, about the comparison and NTLM with Kerberos, etc., kind of the breakdown? I know that part of your plan to share with us.
Well, in order not to confuse the audience, I'll give a little bit of this,
Yep.
but I think the idea is that why it's still there and why we're not migrating to other advanced protocols and what's the full sense of security when we start using the hybrid, right, mode. So
Mm.
so I'll take your offer both hands. So from a survey that we ran and others, it seems that it starts still fall on the same numbers, right? 64% of the organizations or user accounts in the organizations are regularly authenticate with NTLM.
Mm.
Okay. Which is amazing. Again, 30 years old protocol, more than that. Now, when you look a little bit deeper, you can see that whenever organizations could migrate easily, they did, right? So 36% are using Kerberos, the most advanced answer to that problem. 60% just can acknowledge that they cannot, or like that there's areas that they cannot really do that. And 40% are running in hybrid, which means one of two things. A, it's a mindful hybrid. Yeah,
Mhm.
we chose to still work with NTLM, or that we think that we don't have NTLM anymore present in our network, but it does. Okay. Now, I think that the question that you're asking going to like, why can't we migrate? Okay. What is the problem?
Mhm.
Um, so the first and foremost that I already mentioned are legacy systems, right? Sometimes you cannot really use the advanced protocols from, network problems and others, right? Sometimes there are systems that are out of service, like they're still operating, but cannot really be serviced, or code that is still legacy and cannot be updated. This is the most like the strongest reasons that we hear from our customers.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, at the end, we'll speak a little bit about how can you still keep NTLM,
Mhm.
but get a little bit in the middle of the process in order to make sure that one is not exploiting it.
Amazing. And tell me, just to build on that, do you have, I know you have, but you're willing to share some war stories or some findings from the field, if we think ahead, where we've seen that posing maybe with some threat actors?
Yes, yes, that will be great. So I think I made a slide out of it. If you can present it, that would be amazing. So as you guys know, what we will tell like to our audience here is that I'm coming with around of 19 years of background in government, cybersecurity, basically fighting the bad guys. And I found NTLM exploitations across many organizations, critical infrastructure. The 2 points that I needed to fight with a lot were APT28. If you all knows the name Fancy Bear,
Mm,
with a bear, obviously associated with Russia, with the GRU, the military intelligence. And we're speaking about NTLM relays attacks. I will speak about that in a second about what it does.
mhm,
But the idea is that it was targeting energy, defense, and transportation sectors on masses and utilized NTLM relay attacks or pass the hash attacks in order to just take over the identities or mimic themselves or taking the credentials of the identities they were targeting. Another group is still operated, by the way, by North Korea. And we're speaking about war stories. We're actually speaking about things that are still active. Okay, just to be clear, these groups and others are still using those exploits in order to get into your systems and in order to freely laterally move, okay, after they got the initial foothold. So North Korea, right, are one of the actors that utilize that exploitation very well, targeting a lot of communications, cellular carriers, IT and information security sectors, SaaS companies, and others. They're basing their attacks on NTLM credential theft and then again on relay attacks. Um, we can go further and further. Things that are not in the slide. Iranians. So if you heard about APT33, the Elfin, same thing. Again, pass the hash by China with Hafnium. So it's present in a lot of attack infrastructures and tools. And you'll find this in every hacking framework, right? Door. We're speaking about Mimikatz. We're speaking about Responder. We're speaking about a lot of things I will not share here, not to serve the hackers. But guys, it's there, and the focus of the attackers on this, it's because the easiest target and the easiest opportunity.
mm. It's amazing. It's amazing. Still talking about, pass the hash, NTLM relay, man in the middle, which not going anywhere. But I want to take us, I think this is a brilliant, brilliant intro. And I think I want to, to kind of shift gears. And I wanna ask Dor to start, cracking us down on maybe a little bit more technical on how the protocol works. And what's really exciting is the finding is that one of the mitigation mechanisms that Microsoft introduced actually poses, doesn't work. I don't want to steal the thunder. Doesn't work as expected. Let's put it this way. So, yeah, let's start. Go ahead, Dor.
So Yoad, I explore and research these identity protocols for a long, long time. And this time I was really looking into NTLM, and because last November, Microsoft announced the removal of NTLM v1. from recent Windows version,
Mhm.
I wanted to see how does Windows protect from NTLMv1. But before that, we need to understand how NTLM works.
Mhm.
And NTLM is computed by the client. It is very hard. It is very difficult thing to remember, but important. So the user enters its username and password, and the client sends a negotiate message to the server to determine which security mechanisms of NTLM to use, which versions. Then it responds with a server challenge. And then the client takes this server challenge and calculates with the user's password a string called NTLM response.
Mhm.
And then it sends the authentication message to the server. The server must recalculate the same NTLM response. If it's a match, then the server replies with an accept to the client. If the comparison is wrong, then the server won't allow the client to enter the application.
Mhm.
And um, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah, super.
And
Now we're
in
getting to
turn,
the exciting finding. Yes.
and in the context of the domain controller, the server does not allow the server does not know the credentials of the user, but
Mhm.
the domain controller, the Active Directory. Then it is sent um, to the domain controller itself to allow um, or disable um, the authentication itself, and thus
Uh,
that the exact mechanism.
Dor, I want to ask you if you just if you can simplify that for me. What do we see here on the screen? There's a group policy settings that just
Right,
for the sake
right.
of the
So,
audience, what does it do? Yep.
right. So I was looking at the way Microsoft disables NTLMv1 in their Active Directory domain, and the way they offer it is by a group policy
Hmm.
that uh, limits the usage of NTLMv1. And um, I found out that in the reference paper that it gives the power to applications, the third-party application, to downgrade the users to NTLMv1. So this group policy is actually irrelevant if the application chooses not to listen and follow the enforcement of the group policy.
Wow, amazing. So I'm just making sure that I got you. So we are as an admin or security admin. So I'm thinking that I blocked all of my NTLM-v1, but in some cases, if I have a malicious rogue application, still leverage NTLM-v1. Wow, crazy.
So in the happy workflow, it is a misconfigured application that accidentally turned it on. In the worst case scenario, you have a malicious application on your domain that downgrades and forces users to authenticate using NTLMv1.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have a slide with this diagram that includes the group policy. If,
Right.
yep.
Right. So the group policy, this is a diagram that shows how the domain controller enforces the group policy. It actually disables the ability of the domain controller to compute the NTLM response that we saw in the last diagram and replies with a wrong password to the server. So in case the application uses NTLM v1, the domain controllers simply don't know how to reproduce the NTLM response and then replies, I don't know this credentials.
Hmm. Okay.
And then the server replies to the client with a reject with a wrong password error.
Mhm. Just making sure
So
you're going to show us that live, because there's a lot
a
of moving parts here, a lot of text. I just want we're going to
yes,
see that.
so
Okay, super.
yes, exactly. So we can see now in the screen shared. Um,
In,
Yoad, can you approve the
yeah,
screen
but
share?
do you want to go into demo now, or you want to go over?
Oh no, I know. I just wanted to show the group policy itself.
Yeah, go ahead. So go ahead and reshare your screen, please.
Mm-hmm. So we can see in the group policy management editor that there is under security settings in the computer configuration, we can see the LAN manager authentication level. And the policy underneath is the NTLMv2 response only. And we can see in the configuration that the lowest level is NTLMv1, and the highest means clients, Windows clients only, can send NTLMv2 response, but the domain controller must refuse NTLMv1 authentication. So if you go to and enable it, you
Mm-hmm.
simply say, oh, so if I have a non-Windows application and a non-Windows clients like Macs, like Linux systems,
Mm-hmm.
then the domain controller won't even give service to those applications. And once you enable this, like it is enabled on my domain environment, then you would expect it to be protected from NTLMv1. But that's not the
If you
case.
can just pause here for a second. So we have six options. The sixth one, if I understand correctly, is the most restrictive one, which is only allows V2, but completely remove
Yes,
LM and
yes,
NTLM. But
yes. It is LM compatibility 5.
but in the specific scenario that we will see soon, you find that
Mm-hmm.
it's not that here you think, okay, I've eliminated V1, but it's not the case. Okay, just okay, super.
Yes. So now we can go back to the presentation itself, and I will show you what I have discovered.
Hmm. Amazing.
So can you go back just one slide, 2 slides?
Yep.
No, back. Oh, yeah. Another one. Okay. So I was looking deeply into the reference paper, and I discovered that the NetLogon of that uses the machine accounts to authenticate uh, and then ask the domain controller, is this user and password is valid, has the ability to turn on flag O, allow NTLM v1 authentication when only NTLM v2 is allowed.
Mm.
And I was curious, does application server can actually bypass with their own control NTLM v1? I thought it was too good to be true. I thought that the operating system won't let me do that. And then I surprisingly see that um, the once I turn on this flag in the context of an application, then
Mhm.
my authentication started working again
With V1.
in V1, in
So
NTLM v1.
you were able to override the value and still use V1. Amazing.
Yes, so I simulated an application on my demo that authenticates with an NTLM v1 authentication. And then I tried to understand and evaluate if the domain controller provides me with an answer and access.
Mm.
So This,
By the way, though, we have a lot of people in the chat that want to get just making sure that you're going to show us that. So just
of course.
calculate your time wisely. People want to see that in action.
Okay, so let's continue
Mhm.
and see that once the group policy is activated, can you give me another click? Then um, the domain controller surprisingly can calculate and compute the NTLMv1 response. And then the domain controller replies with an accept. The server provides access to the client, and the NTLMv1 in the network is available for breach, for offline cracking, and NTLM relay, and all these kind of attacks.
I have to ask you, just where we're talking here about like Microsoft configuration, was this communicated properly, etc. Shared information. We're openly discussing. It's not a secret.
Yes, yes, it's not a secret. I've done a proper disclosure to Microsoft at the end of September, and by the beginning of November, they announced the removal of NTLM v1 from their Windows 11 and Windows Server 2025.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
But
s- s-
okay.
mhm.
So in various operating systems, this is still valid. So this is work in progress together with Microsoft. It's not that 100% yet.
Yes, yes. I've processed a proper disclosure to MSRC.
Amazing. Let's move on, please. Yes. Okay. So walk us through how it can be exploited, and we'll be very appreciative if you can show us that live.
So, step one for an attacker to exploit it is that it must find a system that is accepting NTLMv1 in the network. Then it must force the client to authenticate with NTLMv1. It can be either intercepting the traffic or forcing it using different kind of tactics like phishing. And then And then once it was downgraded to NTLMv1, then we could capture and relay credentials to gain unauthorized access. And lastly, we can actually crack the NTLMv1 hash and get the credentials and escalate privilege using the compromised identity.
So just before you go to the demo, I love the steps breakdown. So just making sure how easy or how prevalent is it nowadays to still find a system that accepting NTLMv1?
So, by looking at our customers and how nervous on they are regarding NTLM v1, it is very common to see at least a single application that still uses NTLM v1. It is very difficult to map all the applications in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you do that. You map all the applications, and if
Mm-hmm.
you can, disable the application and protect your identity.
Amazing. Amazing. Let's go ahead to the demo. Can't wait to see that.
All right. So I've created a code that simulates the application itself.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see that. This code simply simulates an application, and for this demonstration, I calculate a valid NTLM v1 authentication by myself,
Don't worry, just
just for
one thing. If you want us to actually see the code, you have to zoom in, or if not, not necessarily, then you can just explain what it does.
So I will actually show in Silverfort
Okay.
everything that you need to see. But
Mm-hmm.
for the first run, we can actually see that in Silverfort, we can see a valid NTLM authentication in the domain. We can see that I used domain admin to perform um, an authentication to the domain, and it was allowed. So
Mm-hmm.
my domain controller actually actually is on the highest level of NTLM authentication, and then a compatibility level. And this is why it won't allow me to perform NTLMv1. So in this specific case, when I enter the NTLMv1, then I get the status wrong password right there. And we can see that in Silverfort, when I perform the authentication, then I have the bad password response with an NTLMv1 authentication as a risk indicator, because we can actually detect NTLMv1 in Silverfort. So when I turn on this flag and I have created a pre-made scenario, then I run my authentication again from my application on behalf of the user. And then I can see that my authentication will be allowed. We will see it in a minute. Let's see. Hang on, I got a wrong password. Hang on.
So if I understand correctly so far, I'm just, explaining to myself, we have the compatibility mode, which is the group policy set to the highest level, but still we're able to see accepted packets unless you will define a policy with Silverfort, which
Right. So so
Mm-hmm.
apparently Silverfort was protecting my NTLMv1 authentication. But
Yeah, you had a policy. Okay.
yes, my policy was enabled.
So we were worried, but this was all, this was, okay.
I
This
will
is
show you
so simple.
exactly. So you can see here that when I bypass it, then the NTLM result code
Yeah.
actually allowed the authentication. We can see it in a minute. You can see here how Silverfort protected my previous authentication. But here you can see that the same authentication as earlier now is allowed. So NTLMv1 authentication in a domain that has the highest LM compatibility level, a machine account and application could successfully authenticate using NTLMv1.
Dor, can you show us the policy that you actually defined for that?
Exactly, yeah, for sure. Then I created a policy using Silverfort to block NTLMv1, and you can see that I use risk-based authentication. And I included the risk indicator that indicates NTLMv1. And my source is all devices and all users and groups for this specific matters, because I want all the users and devices to perform denied authentication in case they are authenticating to my application server.
Okay.
And then
This is like a
once,
workaround with the policy. So
yes.
although the group policy does not come into effect, and again, this is work in process. So the application can do V1, but because Silverfort kind of listens to the authentication flow, then you can create a policy to override it. Okay, amazing.
Exactly. So once I turn on my created policy, my risk-based policy, and I would let it a few seconds just to refresh, then I will try to manage my bypass again and try to authenticate using NTLMv1 to the using my application server. And then I received an access denied by Silverfort. So in this case, we can return back to our authentication log panel. And we can see that even though NTLMv1 authentication was performed, it doesn't matter what the domain controller has responded. It matters what Silverfort answered. And we actually denied this authentication, and we prevented the access of the compromised user to the application server itself. So we can see here in the logs table that my authentication was blocked, and the block NTLMv1 policy was used.
So that's
So
basically that's a POC. That's we see that. So we see the problem, we see the configuration, we see the problem, and we see also the offered solution that can be tackled with Silverfort. Okay.
yeah, so with Silverfort, you can actually both map all your NTLMv1 authentication and protect NTLMv1 authentication using this specific group policy. This also assures that if application is misconfigured or malicious application is in the domain, then a proper policy will prevent access. And but we need to make sure we understand that NTLMv1 over the network leads to the compromise of the credentials.
Understood. Okay.
But even though the credentials are compromised, the application secret is still safe.
Interesting. No, you get me thinking here. We also have some questions. We'll tackle those soon. You got me thinking here. First of all, I love the peace of mind concept that that Silverfort is like your second opinion, regardless what's happening in your AD in that matter. I love that. And then you can enforce policies that are applied in real time. Really appreciate that. And also appreciate you taking the time to, it's not common that, researchers show code or how to do things. And I'm really appreciative of that. I want to move things going back to just starting to, to wrap up our discussion. We have some few more talking points. If we can reshare our slide deck, please let me do that. Just a second, and I'll ask Roy also to to reason on some of the findings that we have. Let me ask our admin to bring back our slides. Amazing, it's coming up. Brilliant. And Roy, yes, if you can, try to make sense in this lovely demo we've just seen. Connected to real world scenarios, basically.
I think that Door made a very good point over there. Like, although the system is configured to block it, NTLM requests and authentication can go under the radar. And that's the point. And this is where all the beautiful exploitations or way to manipulate NTLM in order to get the right access is being done, right? So think about that. We have a pen tester that assuming or found an opportunity of NTLM1, which is enabled in a large enterprise, right? And then everything is being opened again, right? The lack of mutual authentication can allow like a man-in-the-middle and relay attacks. It can use the pass the hash, right? Like to steal NTLM passwords and then use them because of this lack of like dual authenticity. And then within minutes, obviously, the most interesting credentials and identities are administrative ones. And the idea is that you can attack the most important servers, right? Like the DC and others, and gain some sort of like admin or root access. And from that's it, right? It's super quick. So it will allow old attacks and super simple to get into our system. And in the next slide, we'll explain a little bit of how to deal with that because I see a lot of questions coming in as well in the chat.
Yes, people are intrigued of what it means and so some best practices of how we can solve it. I think that will be the last topic for us today. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So we can even skip this one because we already talked about this point and move to so what do we do?
We do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So first and foremost, although like we didn't hardly try to promote anything here, you could see how important is it to see 80 logs and like to see the some sort of an authentication firewall, right? Like we need to go beyond IT and system configurations into actively monitoring to find if there's a presence of NTLM like type of request in our system. So after you're doing the obvious, right, which completely disabling NTLM or at least limiting it to the only most like the needed or let's say unable to be enabled to be adapted to new Kerberos or other things, like let's limit that scope. The second thing is regardless what we did, right, and how much we did it and to what extent, we need to monitor. If you're not monitoring, you're just vulnerable. And I think that that's the case of what Dor said. And upon this monitoring, you can apply, if you're in inline, you can apply, like some policies that will allow you to dynamically behave in the secure way once you're finding this NTLM1 or others, right? And how do you, like, what do you do? So you can certainly block, but you can apply MFA, you can apply some more restrictive rules about if you really have to do it. So let's lock it to a specific source machine. Let's lock it to a specific geolocation. Let's make sure that hackers will work very, very, very hard in order to use that old type of attack, right? So be very active when you're monitoring because we all saw it's a matter of seconds, right? And once the system is spawned, it's going beyond that. We need to invest a lot of work in containment and then getting the hackers away.
Amazing.
If you can,
I wanna go to the next slide, connect what you just said to some of the things that I know that gets Dor excited. And this really connects to one of the questions. Let me see, that was from George. Like tools and how to detect or prevent, prevent, two flip side of the coin. And also, so Julie's question was, can NTLMv1 traffic be detected in real time? What are the best monitoring solutions? So Roy, you mentioned that. Dor, if you can, we'll just walk us quickly on the notes on to detect and in real time. I know you have a lot of passion for that.
Right. So many theme solutions can detect NTLMv1 traffic. In Silverfort, we know how to detect and protect in real time from these NTLMv1 attempts. And when you do actively regular pen testing, then you can reveal any NTLMv1 vulnerabilities that exists in your domain today.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. And I think, Roy, you go next. Any final thoughts, to leave us with before we get to a close of this session, this webinar? We cannot hear you. You're on mute, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll just like to reinforce the message. Like it's not a configuration thing. It's not only a configuration thing. This is a security game. Guys, like monitor, be able to automatically respond if you can. If you cannot, if you don't have anything that will help you to be involved or like to be, inline and enforcing, make sure that the alert is when it jumps, like there's somebody who's taking care of it. But at the end of the day, you need to be aware of what's happening.
Brilliant. Let's see, because we have addressed as we went along, I think we addressed most of the questions. I don't see anything that is outstanding at the moment, and I think we're on time, so this is a good time, first of all, to say thank you, Roy, thank you, Dor, thank you for investing the time, to come up with the demo, come up with the findings and, key takeaways. We'll share the deck also. So this is one thing. We will monitor the chat and we'll see if you have questions there. You will definitely get some answers. With that, please talk to your Silverfort representative if you have any concerns or questions. Also go and ask for a personal demo, live demo in our website. And with that, thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate your time and engagement. The recording will be available. Have a great rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much.